We have breaking news from Ian Rapoport, who keeps jerking us around. Tell us what's going on. So originally he says, hey, don't be surprised if Sam Darnold starts week 1. And it was like a big report. He really made a big deal about it. Then he just like goes on Pat McAfee Show. And then like while he's like yucking it up with the boys, is like, oh, by the way, the Niners heard what I said, hit me up, and pushed back and said, why would you count out Trey Lance? Like in passing. That's news. Ian, what do you think of Ian casually saying that the Niners actually went out of their way to be like, dude, why are you saying this?
So then why is he so adamant that he's going to be traded if the team that would be trading him is pushing back on the notion of Sam Darnold being the guy? Why is Ian so all in on Sam Darnold if the Niners aren't?
Is he anymore? Like he has some splaining to do, Ian.
Very.
And I think he knows it, and that's why he kind of tried to bury it mid Ian Rapoport show. Like, no, do a segment on NFL Network and explain what's going on.
Yeah, why have you been saying for months in very specific terms, with very sounding very confident that there is going to be a trade of Trey Lance if there's no source? That seems very bizarre. Very bizarre.
Seems unprofessional. So explain that one. Don't just try to like laugh it off with Pat McAfee, who obviously isn't going to ask you a question because he's not a journalist. You got to answer this question. You're a journalist, Ian Rapoport. To me, the way I interpret it is the Niners brought in Darnold. They like Darnold, and he's a nice fallback in case things fall apart with Trey Lance. But obviously, if they had their way, it would work out with Trey Lance. They're probably hoping plan A is that it works out with Trey Lance. Or obviously plan A is Brock Purdy comes back and he's healthy and you don't have to worry about anything else. Barring that, plan A is Trey Lance works out and Sam Darnold is an intriguing plan B. I think that's the way they wanted it. And you got Ian Rapoport, NFL Network, framing it the other way. And they're like, well, we don't want to raise expectations on Sam Darnold that much. It's Sam Darnold. Come on.
So here's the question. Is Ian Rapoport playing coy right now, or is Ian Rapoport out over his skis on this report and went with a dramatic report about a quarterback being traded and got very specific? It's like he's not going to be traded now, but he is going to be traded after they assess where Brock Purdy is and if Brock's healthy. So it was very specific. So we're supposed to believe that it wasn't a sourced deal. You mean you're going with that level of a rumor? And it's not sourced. It's just
it would seem out of character for someone like him, right? So let me give an interpretation.
Wild.
We've talked about this before. Again, it's possible that the source could be, and I don't know. Let's say it's John Lynch, the initial source. He talks a lot. I mean, he's connected to all these people. What if then Kyle Shanahan calls up Ian Rapoport this week is like, what's going on? And Ian's like, well, I was talking to John. And Kyle's like, well, John doesn't speak for me. I run this team. I mean, I don't know that that's happened, but I mean, that's the only way I could really explain away your questions.
Other than maybe, I mean, the one thing he didn't do today, Grant, is he didn't go and say, yeah, what I was reporting before was wrong. He didn't say that. In fact, when he was pushed on why did you report this? He was like, well, I mean, because Trey Lance hasn't shown me much. Yeah, but who are you? You're not an evaluator. You're not a quarterback coach. You're not an offensive coordinator.
You're not
really
a
head
building.
coach. You're not a GM. You're not in the building.
Yeah.
So your sense of it, see, I don't buy it. I don't buy that Ian Rapoport thinks so much of his own opinion on players and how well they can play or can't play that he would put that out there just on his own thing.
I agree with you. Because that's something I would do. What I do is you and I read the tea leaves and offer our opinions, and we make it very clear that we don't have sources. That's not what Ian's the source guy. Ian can call up 7 people in the organization. So what I'm thinking is either his source wasn't that good. His source got overruled. His source wasn't the number one person in the 49. Because ultimately it comes down to Kyle. And I could see Kyle bringing in.
Did he walk it back? I listened to the whole thing. I didn't ever hear him, Grant, walk it back to be like, you know what? He's probably not going to be dealt. He still sounded. He basically only talked about Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold in that report.
Well, he's saying like, well, the Niners are pushing back, but we'll see what happens, kind of thing. But I just find it interesting that the Niners are basically saying, hey, he didn't hear this from us. He didn't hear this from us. And Ian's like, okay, well, we'll see if I'm wrong.
I know. The other thing that was startling about that whole thing was they're sitting around talking about it, and between McAfee, AJ Hawk, and Ian Rapoport, you can tell none of the three believe in Trey Lance.
Fair. I mean,
didn't that
they're
sound
not again? They're not there at practice, and
they didn't
that's fine.
seem like at all like, like they're
AJ
like,
Hawk.
Trey Lance has got to show us something. Like this guy's been terrible. One guy said, well, it hasn't been that big of a sample size. But outside of that mention, it wasn't like it just when they were discussing who was going to start, it just didn't seem like they were really factoring in Trey Lance. And yet he said he got pushback from people in the building that he made it sound the way he made it sound.
I don't really care what Pat McAfee and AJ Hawk think about the Niners quarterback situation. What I do think is that what the Niners are doing is they eventually might want to trade Trey Lance. Let's say Brock Purdy comes back and is the guy they want. Maybe they want to trade Trey Lance. Talking up Sam Darnold doesn't help that. It doesn't. Maybe you want to trade one of the two of them if Brock Purdy comes back. Talking up Sam Darnold doesn't increase his trade value, but it does decrease Trey's because now everyone around the league is like, man, you really hate Trey, man. He's worse than Sam Darnold, huh? And you want me to give you a second-round pick for this guy? No, he's worse. You're telling me he's worse than Sam Darnold. So they have to walk that back. They have to be like, wait a second, Ian, shut up.
Well,
we whispered that to you. That was a whisper.
I mean, we could talk about that, but the real damage that's been done to Trey Lance's value is the fact that the Niners don't seem to be talking him up, are talking up Sam Darnold, and then the two teams
until today.
The two teams though that needed quarterbacks who quote unquote knew Trey, Rand Carthon and the Titans went with Will Levis, and D'Amico and the Texans and the Niners South crew in Houston went with CJ Stroud. And so that speaks loudly too.
Good call. I think they both made the right call.
Louder, right? Because
I think they both made the right call. I mean, both Levis and Stroud have more experience than Lance, and they don't have serious injuries that they're coming back from, and they have the full rookie contract. And they don't have a surgically repaired
I mean,
ankle.
It's all speculative, man. I would rather have Trey Lance than those guys.
Yeah, but sure, in a vacuum, but he's more expensive. He comes with an injury. He only has 2 years left on his deal. I mean, his contract is awful compared to Will Levis or CJ Stroud. Actually, CJ Stroud's pretty.
That's
comparable.
One way to look at it. That's one way. The other way to look at it is, you know what? There's a lot of bumps in the road to success, and he's already been on those. Been already down that road, and Trey's got a little bit more urgency, and I think he's probably a little bit closer to. Whatever he's going to be, we're going to see it, I think, right away. Where I don't know about Will Levis. I'm not sure about Stroud.
Right. Fair enough. Also, if Brock doesn't come back right away, and this is really a competition between Trey and Darnold to start week 1, it's Trey's competition to lose. If Sam is starting week 1, it's probably because Trey played really bad in the offseason, not because Sam Darnold found this other gear that hasn't existed. I mean, I'm sure Sam Darnold could probably be a little smarter, turn the ball over a little less, but he's Sam Darnold. Trey's going to need to. This is his job, and if he plays like crap, then it won't be his job. I think it's pretty much that simple. Unless Brock comes back and makes a miraculous recovery, and it's really not up to anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, if Brock comes back and they make him the starter immediately, and he plays really well and takes off from what we saw, then it's a wrap. But that's a big if, right? That's a huge if.
A big if.
And also, I think Trey easily beats out Darnold if Trey has progressed at all. If he's progressed in this offense, he should beat out Sam Darnold. He really should.
Even if he hasn't, Sam Darnold's a pretty low bar. So even if Trey Lance wins the job and starts week 1, he's still gonna have a lot to prove. Like beating out Sam Darnold doesn't mean he's made it. Is I guess what I'm trying to say. No, it really doesn't. I mean, it's
points.
Sam Darnold.
I think that the Niners are going to evaluate this on points, and the bar has been set high because Purdy was scoring 30 points a game. Now, granted, he did it with McCaffrey. Trey didn't have McCaffrey, but Trey will have the full complement of weapons, and it's really what it's going to take. It's just going to take leading the team down the field to points.
Yeah, absolutely. Wins. And staying healthy.